And I've auditioned for a lot and haven't got a lot. And then Gran Torino came around where he was talking to me. It was like this little role.
Think of auditioning for every single movie that your father's done and been rejected each time. That's Scott Eastwood's life. Even when Clint did American Sniper, Scott was not given a call. When his father was winning Academy Awards, Scott made a living parking automobiles and shaking cocktails. He earned more behind the bar than on. By age 35, he was so disillusioned with Hollywood that he thought about being a firefighter. The biggest surprise isn't how he struggled in his career. It's what occurred when he finally took a stand against his dad. On March 21st, 1986, Scott Clinton Reeves was born in Terry, California. His birth wasn't headline news. It wasn't even publicly admitted by his own dad, Clint Eastwood. Clint was a star at the time, both directing and starring in blockbusters such as Pale Rider. But while he towered on red carpets, Scott's existence silently began in the wings of scandal. His mother, Jaseline Reeves, was a flight attendant. She had met Clint during one of his many trips in the mid-1980s. What followed was a secret affair that lasted at least 3 years. Years during which Clint was publicly involved with another woman, actress Andrea Locke. Locke had no idea he was living a double life. She thought that they were exclusive and learned about Scott and his younger sister Catherine during a contentious lawsuit many years later. When Scott was born, his birth certificate did not have the Eastwood name. He was Scott Clinton Reeves, a discreet attempt to keep the affair a secret. Catherine was born in 1988. By then, the secret had extended so far that the truth could no longer be concealed. But Clint did not claim them publicly, and he certainly did not raise them. Scott spent his childhood in the small town of Carmel by the Sea, where Clint had once been mayor. But the kid who grew up there did not grow up in celebrity style. His dad may have been drawing $15 million per picture in the 90s, but Scott's universe was much different. When Scott was 10, Jaseline relocated them to Hawaii. It wasn't merely a scenery change. It was an effort to put thousands of miles between Scott and the Eastwood glare. In humble surroundings there, Scott led a life his classmates never doubted. They had no idea he had a Hollywood dad. And Clint, by and large, remained out of view and out of grasp. As Clint built his fortune with blockbuster movies and additional real estate holdings, Scott survived on Jaseline's flight attendant income. He did construction work as a teenager. He waited tables. When he attended college at Loyola MRY Mount University, it was not by virtue of a trust fund. He paid his own tuition. Even as he was getting a degree in communications, he was taking acting classes, auditioning for extras, and continued to use his birth name, Scott Reeves. He didn't expect preferential treatment. He didn't expect the aid of Clint, but the rejection nonetheless. Scott subsequently admitted that he had auditioned for almost every one of his father's movies and was rejected each time. Clint would not cooperate. He did not even cast Scott in significant roles, even when he directed American Sniper, a movie that made over $547 million and earned 6 Academy Award nominations. Scott only asked for one shot. He did not receive it. Clint's philosophy was straightforward. No freebies, no favors. You work for yourself. That may sound impressive, but for Scott, it translated into years of making low-budget movies, parking cars, and constructing houses while his dad was collecting Academy Awards. His first jobs were practically invisible. In Flags of Our Fathers, 2006, directed by Clint, Scott played a minor role as Private Roberto Lunsford. He was listed as Scott Reeves. Nobody had any idea he was the director's son. He preferred it that way, but the price was steep. He missed the spotlight, the headlines, the momentum. In movies such as Pride and Player 5150, he was buried in the credits. These weren't indie movies. Some went directly to video. Others played only through a few theaters. He was stuck in a professional no man's land, laboring hard but going nowhere. His domestic situation wasn't much better. Clint Eastwood's 8 children were born to 6 women. Scott was only part of the puzzle. His half-siblings were Lori, born in 1954 and surrendered for adoption; Kimber, born in 1964 to a stunt woman; Kyle and Allison, born while Clint was married to Maggie Johnson; Francesca, born in 1993 with actress Frances Pfizer; and Morgan, born in 1996 to news anchor Dina Ruiz. Some of them were raised in privilege. Others, such as Scott and Catherine, were not. Some didn't even get to meet one another until adulthood. Gatherings for the family were strained. Resentment seethed just below the surface. Throughout his adolescent years in Hawaii, Scott struggled. He acted out. He fought and got suspended. He had his anger issues, which he would later describe. He knew who his dad was, but couldn't speak of it. Couldn't question why he wasn't around. Couldn't tell anyone why he was important yet invisible. When they went back to California in 2000, he started at Carmel High. Gradually, the truth started to seep out. Some of his classmates treated him like royalty. Some ridiculed him. He thought about using the Reeves name for the rest of his life just to avoid the comparisons. By the time he got to college, he had had enough hiding. But he still wouldn't use his dad's authority. He sought out financial aid. He worked for hours on end. He looked for jobs that paid him almost nothing. And then things started to change. In 2009, Scott was cast in Invictus. It was another Clint Eastwood movie, but Scott used his actual surname this time. The movie was proving yourself under pressure. It was battling to be taken seriously, and that is precisely what Scott was doing. At the age of just 26, Scott Eastwood took a huge gamble. He contracted for not one, but 3 horror movies. His Texas Chainsaw 3D role would have committed him to a trilogy, and no one even knew his actual name. He was still using Scott Reeves, so as not to be known as the son of Clint Eastwood. It was filmed in Shreveport, Louisiana, in August 2011. Scott had not even watched the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The only one he'd viewed was the Jessica Biel remake. And yet, he entered one of horror's most well-known franchises. That film became the 7th in the series and was marketed as a direct continuation of the first 1974 film. Next was a colossal shift. Only a year later, in 2014, Scott appeared in Fury, a gritty World War II drama film starring Brad Pitt. This was no cameo. He played Sergeant Miles, the tank crew's newest recruit. The cast received the National Board of Review's Best Ensemble Award. That put Eastwood, still attempting to establish that he wasn't just coasting on a name that was well-known, shoulder to shoulder with Pitt, Shia LaBeouf, and John Bernthal. It was official industry validation, and it wasn't for merely being there. Scott underwent extreme military boot camp and had to drive actual Sherman tanks from the 1940s. This was brutal, physical, emotional labor, but it paid off. Critics began to call him a legitimate actor for the first time, as opposed to Clint's son for the first time. A year later, in 2015, Scott made another surprise jump, this time into romance. He appeared in The Longest Ride, Nicholas Sparks' film, playing a bull rider who falls in love. It was typical Sparks, slow burns, massive emotions, and agonizing choices. But this is what's crazy. Scott performed his own bull riding stunts. That was in a year loaded with Marvel celebrities and huge blockbusters. Yet Scott surged ahead. He was even nominated for Choice Movie Breakout Star. Studios then perceived him differently. And when people believed they knew him already, Scott surprised the world once more. A few months later, he appeared in Taylor Swift's Wildest Dreams music video. Not merely a cameo, he had the starring romantic lead role in a dreamy 1950s African set movie within a movie by Joseph Kahn. It was one of Swift's sexiest and most filmic videos. The lustful scenes were a surprise, and so was the furor. Industry folks cautioned him against it. They told him it could kill his reputation as a serious actor, but Scott did it anyway. The video premiered during the pre-show of the MTV VMAs on August 31st, 2015. In hours, it had millions of views. And it came with a twist. All of the proceeds went to wild animal conservation. At the same time, Scott Eastwood held a heartbreaking secret for nearly 3 years. In 2017, in an interview with GQ Australia, he finally came clean. His girlfriend Jewel Brangman had died in a car accident back in 2014. She was just 26. The accident wasn't bad. It was the type of accident that most people survive. But Jewel didn't. She was killed instantly. And Scott never spoke about it. Not to the public, nor even to her family. He remained quiet until this one interview. Jewel was driving from Los Angeles to San Diego in a 2001 Honda Civic she rented. Along the way, She barely rear-ended another car in a tiny chain reaction collision. Nothing appeared fatal. Nobody else in the mishap sustained serious injuries. But Jules' vehicle contained a deadly secret. The airbag within was recalled in 2009. The company that rented it out never repaired it. When the airbag inflated, it did not protect her. It killed her. The chemicals within had grown unstable. The metal canister ruptured. A shrapnel pierced her neck. Scott explained it was so brutal, it broke her spine in two. That was the sole damage. One flying piece of metal ended her life. The airbag was from Takata. Their airbags were installed in 24 million automobiles in the U.S. It was the largest vehicle recall in American history. But for Jewel, it came too late. She was one of the victims. Her father, Alexander Brangman, was devastated. He had relocated halfway across the country to live near his daughter. She was his only child. She was his closest friend. The last Father's Day card she signed for him indicated that she'd forever be his little girl. She was gone 3 months later. Scott was heartbroken. He'd lost friends before, he said, but never someone he loved like that. He'd never lost a partner. That changed him. He said it made it difficult to date. It made it difficult to trust people. He didn't even tell Jules's father for years. In 2017, he confessed, "I still haven't found the right words." Jules' dad had pleaded for explanations. He wished the world to understand how much she was loved.